In this activity, we're going to get a very general idea of the different biomes of South America. Now, the map has been simplified. If you do an internet search for a map of the biomes of South America, you can get some more detailed maps that show you all the little ins and outs. So I looked at a couple different maps. Unfortunately, I also saw some maps that I thought were wrong. There was some inconsistency in the maps I saw online, so you've got to be careful. I found one map, for example, that said that the entire coast over here, the west coast, was temperate forest, and I know that's wrong because I know for a fact this is the Atacama Desert. I've done some research on that, and I know that's desert. So you have to be careful with choosing a good map. So I hope that I have made good choices. I looked at a number of different maps, and hopefully this map is reasonably accurate. It's simplified, but hopefully reasonably accurate. So you're going to need 8 colors for this map, and you don't have to use the same color that I'm going to use for these areas. For example, I'm going to make my tropical wet forest area. I think I'll go ahead and make that kind of a green. You can make it red if you want to. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you accurately code the areas you color here with the square over here, because this is your key. So it says tropical wet forest. You choose a color. Say I'm going to do light green. You color in here. And then we're going to make all the tropical wet forest areas that color. So later, when you look back and you want to know, wait, what's this area? Well, you look at the color and you find it on the key, and that'll tell you what it is. So the important thing is that your key matches your coloring. It doesn't have to be the same color that I'm using. So since I went ahead and filled in the first one, let's go ahead and do it. It says tropical wet forest. And I will zoom in as much as I can here. This is a large area, so it's going to be mainly here. This is the most famous biome in South America. This is your very, very wet forests, which we often call rainforests. And to qualify as a rainforest, you have to get at least 80 inches of rain per year. Most of them get a lot more than that. They can get hundreds of inches of rain every year. In some places it rains every day. The water just keeps recycling every day. Rain, rain, rain. So this huge area in here is the Amazon Basin. This is all tropical rainforest. So I'm going to start down here. You see how the shape goes down here? I'm going to start down there and work my way up. So basically, once you get started with the shape, you can just kind of keep going, and everywhere that is that shape, you keep coloring it that color. Now you might want to color rather lightly here. It's going to take you a long time if you fill it in super solidly. You can if you want to, but I'm going to kind of concentrate on these edges mostly. Now what I don't have labeled here, put in, is the Amazon River. We can add that later if we want to. This map simply shows us the biomes. And a biome is an area that has a certain quality to it, like the rainforests. And that whole area is similar. It doesn't mean that every area is identical. And actually, I should have started by showing you a picture of this rainforest area. Let me backtrack and show you. You can just look up here for just a second. The wet tropical forests aren't entirely jungle looking. I was kind of surprised to see there's a lot of trees that look very similar to what grows in the area where I live in northeastern United States. It wasn't all that different. I mean, we don't have little palms sticking up in here, but there were a lot of looked like hardwood trees also. In some areas in the Amazon rainforest, there is fog all the time. They call this a cloud forest, and there's a constant fog that settles in and keeps the top wet. But in other areas, the top is more dry. And here you can see very clearly where the trees stick out here. This little sticky up area is called the emergent layer, where the trees are emerging out from, this is the canopy down here. And so it's a fight for sunlight. These trees are pushing out, trying to get sunlight. So here the emergent layer would be here and up in here. This is called the canopy, and then they call this the understory, and down here we have the forest floor. And you can study the layers of the rainforest more if you'd like to. So I'm going to keep coloring around here. Now, the country lines are not shown either. This is simply a map of the biomes. The area here, the big area, is mostly Brazil. Then we merge over into Venezuela. Along the coast here we have Guyana and Suriname and French Guiana. We come over into Venezuela. Colombia is over here. So the rainforest area extends into a lot of different countries. They all share a bit of the rainforest. And then over into here, Colombia is the country where we connect up here. We don't show the connection with Central America. Cut off Central America in this picture. Snipped it off. So this is where Panama comes in, attaches to Colombia. And then on the coast here we have Ecuador and Peru along the coast here. And then, of course, we have the Andes Mountains running down here. Picking up in here, these little things. And all down here is where the mountains are going to come. But we don't have the mountains shown on here. You may add the mountains if you'd like to. When you're done coloring, you can add what you want, little things like that. But again, this is just simply a map of the biomes. That's all it is. So other biomes we're going to meet grassy areas, grasslands, deserts are a biome, cold forests, dry forests. Of course, in each biome you're going to find different plants and animals. Now you see here how I'm just kind of holding my pencil to the side. My pencil's getting kind of flat. It's kind of getting worn, which is a good thing. I don't really want it sharp right now. I want kind of a nice flat surface because this is a big area to color. Don't worry about making it super dark. Something like that is just fine. You can pause if you want to finish that area. I'm going to go on and go down here. This area down here is also similar biomes, wet forests. Probably put the equator in here somewhere. This equator runs through about through there. So this is a little bit below the equator, but it's still very warm. Right along the equator is considered tropical, and then a little ways away is subtropical. So over here, have this, and then up in here. So we're going to have these isolated pockets. And like I said, a more accurate map would have more of these little pockets. There'd be some here and here, some little dots of green, but we're going to keep it very simple. So those are your areas of tropical wet forests. Now let's move to tropical dry forest. I'm going to come down here in my key. I'm going to make these a different color green. I'm going to stick with green, but I'm going to make this kind of a more of a true green. This is a little more of a, maybe they say Kelly green. Okay, so tropical dry forests are here. Now, keep this light, even if you're using a dark color. This is a darker green, but I'm going to keep this light because I want to write something. this area has a name that I want to write in there. We're going to give you a couple extra names for these areas. We'll just write them on with a pen. So if you want to keep this a little bit lighter, you could go a little bit darker around the outside, like this, to kind of define the edge. That often looks nice. Get the edge nicely defined, and then leave the inside a little bit lighter so we can write something here. And then over here, we'll do all the writing at the end. We'll just do all the coloring right now. Alright, so there's another little area of tropical dry forest. And then up here, we have some of this very similar biome there. I'm going to go a little bit harder here because I don't have to write over it. There, there. Not here. These are going to be something different. Just by the coast, those two. And then there's this place up here. Like that. Right there. And then around here like this. Now this little teardrop shaped thing right there. Right there. That is a very large lake. You can see it comes in. Connected to the ocean there. There's a very narrow opening. That's Lake Maracaibo. So don't color that. And then we have a little bit right here. So these are drier forest areas. And let's see. Okay. Right over. No, those are going to be something else. Okay, I think that's all that we're going to color. Now, what do these areas look like? Let's pick on this area right here. If you were actually here, what would you see? Well, I went searching for some pictures of this area, which is called Gran Chaco. And these are the pictures that I came up with there. That one's not too foresty. It's kind of got some, well, looks like, it's not entirely grassland though. You can't call it grassland because grassland really doesn't have any trees. And that is trees, so that's considered dry forest. And here's another picture from that same area. Get a scale, you can see the car there, a Jeep going through, so that's a pretty big tree. So that's another picture of this area right here. And we'll see some more dense forests in a minute. But right now let's go on to our tropical grasslands. And for that I'm going to use kind of a light tannish color. You can use what you'd like to, but I'm going to use something that looks kind of like dry grass. So that's going to be this large area right here. It's large, it's good for that kind of a lightish color. The yellows and tans are generally easier to do a large area with. They don't show streaks quite as much. And right here in the middle, don't color this because this is an area where it gets pretty dry. It actually qualifies as a desert. It doesn't get very much rain. So the area right around here would also be sort of dry. So where does the desert end and the grasslands begin? You know, it's really kind of a fuzzy area. It doesn't suddenly, you take one step and wow, I'm out of the desert, right? So there would be some area here which they call dry shrublands. But I didn't want to add a whole other category here, so this will be good enough. All right, grasslands down here. Of course, grasslands are full of grass. We'll look at a couple pictures in a minute. And in a minute we'll see that there's an area right here where it floods. So this is heavy, heavy rain. This is pretty wet. And so we have a section here where part of the year it's flooded and part of the year it's dry. So it has a very changing climate back and forth. All right, let's just finish this up with grasslands here. And also down here, sort of the same type of environment. And up here, this little tiny thing here, this is here. this here. And we're going to color this little strip the same color. And it sounds kind of weird. I have this line across here. It looks like these two should be different colors. Actually, this is kind of a complicated area where you have dots of, we should have dots of light green, dark green, tan, all mixed in. There's little spotted areas where these biomes kind of get mixed up. We're going to simplify it though and say this is kind of all grasslands. There's some green spots in there, but this area here, this lower area where from the line down here, this is a special name. So that's why I drew the line across here. This has a special identification. We'll see in a minute. Okay, let's do next. We have the temperate grasslands and dry shrublands, and for that I'm going to use pink. You can use what you want to. I'm going to choose pink, and that would be this area down here. Now, some of this almost qualifies as a desert. This is the area called Patagonia down at the bottom here. And it gets little enough rain that it can qualify as a cold desert, especially in this area down here along near the Andes Mountains. Like I said, we're simplifying this. So I did put in the title temperate grasslands and dry shrublands. So the dry shrubland part will incorporate that little part of the desert. It's not the worst desert in the world. It's not the driest one. So we'll just call it dry shrublands. Okay, and that goes all the way down here. So this is mainly the country of Argentina, like that. Go to here. So temperate means it has moderate temperatures. Tropical would mean it was very hot, closer to the equator. So up here we have grasslands that are close to the equator. The equator runs something like that. They're close to the equator, so they would be hot. Down here we get further away from the equator, and the temperatures are going to be cooler. So we don't have tropical areas. Even if it's wet, it's not going to be tropical. You can have a cold rainforest. Down here there's some areas that actually qualify as cold rainforests, but here we're going to have temperate. So temperate means that the temperature is not too hot. So where I live in Pennsylvania in the United States, we're a temperate region, and we have spring and summer, fall and winter. You know, it gets hot in the summer, but not too hot. And it gets cold in the winter, but not like Arctic cold. So it's temperate. So we have temperate forests next. And I'm going to choose for mine kind of a dark blue. You can choose whatever color you want. I'm going to make mine blue. And our areas of temperate forests are going to be all along here. Actually, let me back up, show you pictures of these areas. These would be forests that I'm used to. It looks very much like a Pennsylvania forest. New York, Vermont, anywhere in the northeastern U.S. And there, we've got some conifer trees, pine trees down here, and hardwood trees. We don't have any palms or ferns in these forests. So these forests would be very much like those of North America, Canada, northeastern U.S. Even parts of the west coast of America have places where it's so wet you could call it a cold rainforest. So even in these would be like the forests of the northwest of US also. Okay, so that's the temperate forests. And then let's do the mountain grasslands. You can use whatever color. Mine looks sort of like a magenta. And the mountain grasslands would be this area right in here. And this is the region of the Andes Mountains. Some of the mountains would be very, very tall, and they would be snow-capped. There'd be little bits of snow along here. We'd have a very polar environment, but those are very small. And oops, up here, these little dots here, this one and this one, here's where we have just little bits of high mountainous grasslands. And then, so it goes from all the way here, here, and there. There's basically 3 areas. And I'll show you a couple of pictures here. There's the mountain grasslands. So people walking around. You see there's not a lot of trees. There's a few over here. But in a grasslands, it's really mainly grass. And you can see the Andes Mountains in the distance. That's the mountain grasslands. And here's some of these down, it would be down in this area here, Patagonia. So we'd have kind of down in this region, the mountain grasslands might look like this. Again, really no trees, some grass. Very, and there's the little bits of snow. So this might even qualify as really an Arctic kind of environment up here, but down here this would be mountain grasslands, and in the valleys down here below, mountain grasslands. Now we just have 2 areas over here. Let's do the desert first, actually. The very bottom one, I'm going to make it yellow. Down here, desert. And the desert is right here. This is the Atacama Desert. Runs up through Chile, Peru. Like that. And then right over here, remember we left this little spot over here? This whole area is kind of dry. You might even want to, we'd stretch it out like this. This is kind of, there'd be a transition region in the desert. This whole area here, this area is more dry than over here, as we'll see. This is kind of dry. We'll spread it out a little bit. There's a smaller area that would actually qualify as a desert. Remember, a desert is an area that gets less than 10 inches of rain a year. So there would be a little area there that would qualify. Some of this would be kind of on the dry side. Okay, and then we have, lastly, our Mediterranean woodlands and scrublands. So basically, this is a transition. This area here, the Atacama Desert, this is bone dry. There's a place in here called the Valley of the Moon, where, as far as they know, it's never rained. And I mean never. There's, on modern records, however long we've been keeping records, 100, 200 years, it's never rained. So this is dry. And down here we have our temperate forests. So it gets enough rain. There's lush trees and grasses that grow down here. So somewhere in between we have to have a transition. We got desert here, and we got a nice wet forest down here. And so in the middle it's going to be not too dry and not too wet. And so that's what we call our Mediterranean woodlands and scrublands. And let's see, I will choose for that. What haven't I used? I don't know. I was going to make it a light blue, but I don't know if that'll show up differently, or we can make it an orange maybe. I'll see if that'll, well, yeah. I'll try a light blue. Again, you don't have to choose the colors I'm choosing. You can choose something else. So this is our transition zone. desert doesn't just suddenly stop. It's not like a chain link fence across and desert, and on the other side there's forest. Of course, that doesn't happen. So that's our transition. And so they call it Mediterranean because this climate would be similar to what you find in the Mediterranean. It's kind of funny to have something called Mediterranean over here, and of course the Mediterranean Sea is half a world away, but the climate would be similar. So that's all the coloring. And now I want to add a few labels. Now you can use a pencil, you can try that, or if you have a pen, any kind of a pen, a ballpoint, but beware of ruining markers. If you've colored very heavy on here, either if you use crayon or very heavy colored pencil, sometimes in a marker it'll actually clog the tip. So you might be better off with some kind of an ink pen here. And we're going to just write a couple labels of areas that have a particular name that's very well known. And the first one would be right here. The most well-known name that's describing the biome area is the Pampas. I'm going to zoom in. This will be down the area of Argentina. Right across here, this is a very flat plain. And I'm just going to write P-A-M-P-A-S. And just below that, this area here is called Patagonia. P-A-T-A, Pata, G-O-N-I-A. Patagonia is in the country of Argentina, but and maybe it extends down here. This isn't like exact. I maybe should have started the P down here. It kind of goes down here, but this general lower part of Argentina is called Patagonia. And then up here is the Gran Chaco, G-R-A-N, Gran, C-H-A-C-O. And then right next to it, there's an area right here. We actually should probably kind of make a little dashed line. Part of this grasslands area right here is called the Pantanal. So right kind of small here. Keep your letters small. P-A-N-T-A-N-A-L. Pantanal. And then maybe you put in parentheses below it, this is flooded grasslands. And oftentimes, grasslands, flooded grasslands. Some maps will have this as a separate color. They would have added a separate section here just for this, flooded grasslands. But it is a grassland, so I kept it all the same color. But this area in particular, it's part of the year extremely wet. And here's a picture I found to show there's puddles everywhere. Not just puddles, I mean really large puddles. There's whole regions that turn into lakes. And that affects what kind of wildlife like to live there. You have to be able to tolerate lots of water, and then there's a dry season where it would dry up and it would just be a regular grasslands. And other times of the year it'd be like a swamp. And that region is called the Pantanal. And then, let's see, let's label this desert. The name of this is the Atacama, A-T-A-C-A-M-A, Atacama Desert. And then the other grasslands has a name. It's up here. It's called Los Llanos. It would be L-L-A-N-O-S. And you can also add the Amazon River if you'd like to. Now you can do a more accurate version. Here's the real quickie version here. Right here is where it comes in, kind of goes across like this. Okay. And then there's lots of tributaries that come off like this. Tributary is a river that contributes. Like that. Contributes water to the main river. And then there's little tributaries that go off like that. Alright, so this is the quickie, not too accurate version here, if you want to just add that. But just because it's so important, contributes to the biomes, we can stick the Amazon in there. Now the last thing you need to do to finish the project is get the page with the animals, cut out the animals, and right here it gives you the key if you need help knowing what they are. I have listed, like, first row, there's the Andean condor, chinchilla. You just go right along. It tells you what each row is. Make sure you know before you cut them apart. And then find the spots here where they go. Use like a glue stick and stick them on there. And then I'll show you a picture of the final project. And there's your finished product. The animals are in approximately the right location for where they are. So the animals that live up here are up here, and these animals live down here. But some of them have a fairly wide range, like there's armadillos that kind of live all over. And of course, this isn't even close to a fair representation of how many animals are in South America. Half of all the species on planet Earth live just in this area. South America is the continent with the greatest biodiversity, that is the greatest number of different species of plants and animals. So if you're not familiar with any of these, if you don't know what a mara is, or if you've never heard of the pink fairy armadillo, you can just type it in, do an internet search, and come up with some info and learn more about them.